February 10, 1632, Istanbul. The courtyard of Topkapi Palace is filled with rebellious soldiers. Grand Vizier Hafiz Ahmed Pasha tries to seek refuge before the Sultan, but the mob seizes him, and the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire, the second most powerful man in the realm, is torn apart before the young Sultan's own eyes. The 20-year-old on the throne can do nothing that day. He only watches. But inside, he makes a vow, and he will keep it. Within 8 years, Grand Viziers will tremble at the mere mention of his name. This is the story of Murad IV, the story of the Sultan of Wrath. So how did it come to this? Let's go back 9 years, 1623. The Ottoman throne is in complete chaos. Young Osman was deposed by his own soldiers and strangled to death. His uncle, Mustafa I, was mentally unfit, placed on the throne twice and removed twice. And now it falls to an 11-year-old child, Murad. The true ruler of the state is his mother, Koci Sultan, one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history, governing the empire as regent in her son's name. But the state is collapsing. The treasury is empty. Anatolia is in revolt. And in 1624, disaster strikes. Baghdad falls to the Safavids. As the child sultan grows up, the empire is falling apart before his eyes. In just 9 years, the Grand Vizier changes 8 times. Each new vizier pays for the last one's failure. This instability teaches young Murad a lesson he will never forget. Any ruler who looks weak drags the state into chaos. And he never forgets what happened to his brother, young Osman. By 1632, Murad is 20 years old, but power still isn't his. The real force in Istanbul lies with the palace guard's unruly factions. When wages fall short, they revolt. When they dislike a pasha, they storm the palace gates. And on that February day, the scene we just described unfolds. Grand Vizier Hafiz Ahmed Pasha, when the soldiers gathered at the hippodrome demand he be handed over, seeks refuge with the Sultan and is lynched before his very eyes. Here's the darkest part. The man behind this uprising is one of their own from within the state, Topal Recep Pasha. He personally incites the mob to seize the Grand Vizierate for himself. And after the murder, he gets what he wanted. The seal is handed to him. Murad waits. For 3 months, he acts as if nothing happened. Then, on May 18th, 1632, he summons Recep Pasha to the palace and ends it all with a single sentence. The Pasha is strangled on the spot, his body thrown outside the gate. That day, everyone understands. The child, Sultan, is dead. Someone else entirely now sits in his place. But Murad's story isn't just one of fear. In 1631, an Albanian-born statesman, Koci Bey, presents a report directly to the Sultan. Its contents are a grave accusation: bribery everywhere. The Timar land system has collapsed. Instead of soldiers ready for war, the registers are full of ghost names. Not merit, but connections decide who becomes a pasha. Murad reads the report and acts. He orders a full recount of the Janissary Corps, cutting off salaries paid to soldiers who don't exist. He dismisses corrupt judges and has some of them executed. So, this man wasn't just an executioner. He was also a reformer, single-handedly trying to rein in a crumbling bureaucracy, the same way he reined in an army. Now, firmly in power, Murad chooses one of history's harshest methods to impose order: fear. And a disaster hands him the excuse. September 2nd, 1633, a fire breaks out in Sibali. Fed by the wind, the flames reduce a quarter of Istanbul to ash. Tens of thousands are left homeless. The blame falls on the coffee houses. Because to Murad, coffee houses aren't just places to drink coffee. They're centers of gossip, dissent, and whispers of rebellion. Within 2 weeks, decrees rain down. First, every coffee house in Istanbul will be demolished. 3 days later, tobacco is banned. Then comes the ban on alcohol. And the punishment isn't prison, it isn't exile. It's death. A soldier caught smoking in the street is executed on the spot. It's even forbidden to go out at night without a lantern after the evening call to prayer. Some report their neighbors. Others are executed on mere suspicion. An entire city held its breath in the shadow of one man. But what truly made Murad legendary was something else. At night, he disguises himself and mixes in among the people. He walks into taverns and streets like an ordinary man and catches anyone breaking the law with his own hands. In Istanbul, no one can trust anyone anymore, because the stranger across from you might just be the Sultan himself. So who was the man behind this fear? Sources from the era describe Murad's physical strength as almost superhuman. It's said he could lift a mace weighing 200 oka, about 250 kilos. He's recorded as piercing 8 shields with a single javelin throw. But there's one record that isn't legend. It's documented. At the archery grounds, his arrow landed 1,070 jez away, roughly 675 meters. The stone marking that shot still stands today. Unbeaten in wrestling, the best horseman around, he could swing a sword for hours without tiring. And this strength wasn't just for show. That the man on the Ottoman throne was also the army's finest soldier meant something entirely different to the Janissaries. An army that had watched sultans avoid campaigns for decades now saw a ruler who could throw down wrestlers on the field. It was respect mixed with fear, and that was exactly what Murad wanted. But this hard man had a side no one expected. Murad was also a poet. Writing under the pen name Muradi, he was a man of culture, fluent in Arabic and Persian. In his court, great figures flourished: the historian Khatib Celebi and Nefi, the sharpest-tongued poet of the age. Nefi's satirical verses circulated hand to hand across Istanbul. No official was safe from his pen. One day, Murad summoned Nefi and asked him to stop satirizing anyone. Nefi promised, but his pen wouldn't listen. Soon after, he wrote a new satire about the Sultan's own brother-in-law and Grand Vizier, Bayram Pasha. When Bayram Pasha found out, he asked the Sultan for one thing: Nefi's head. And Murad signed the execution order for one of the poets he had sheltered and admired for years. In 1635, the sharpest pen of the empire was silenced, strangled inside the Sultan's own palace. 1635. Murad does what no Sultan had done in decades. He personally leads his army east against the Safavids. The target, the fortress of Revan, today's Yerevan. The siege begins, and the fortress surrenders in barely 10 days. News of victory reaches Istanbul. But right after this triumph, blood is spilled in the palace. On his return from campaign, by Murad's order, 2 of his brothers, Prince Bayezid and Prince Suleiman, are executed. Their crime? None. Simply existing. Murad eliminates anyone who could rival his throne. He knows the same forces that toppled his brother, young Osman, could one day raise his own brothers instead. 3 years later, right before setting out for Baghdad, a third brother, Prince Qasim, meets the same fate. Only one brother remains, Ibrahim. Why he was spared is a story of its own. According to legend, his mother, Kosem Sultan, stood before Murad to protect her last remaining son. One life to preserve the dynasty. That was all. Now it's time for a wound that had bled for 14 years. Baghdad, May 8th, 1638. Murad sets out from Istanbul with a massive army. After months of marching, they arrive before Baghdad in mid-November. Before them stand towering walls the Safavids had spent years reinforcing. The siege lasts a full 40 days. Murad is among his soldiers throughout, inspecting the trenches, standing by the cannons, fighting like an ordinary soldier when needed. And on December 24th, 1638, Baghdad falls. The city he had lost as a child, 14 years earlier, he now reclaims before turning 30. He returns to Istanbul as the conqueror of Baghdad. But the other side of this victory is rarely told in the history books. After the city surrendered, on Murad's order, nearly the entire Safavid garrison is put to the sword. Some sources say over 30,000 lost their lives, leaving only a few hundred survivors. The victory was won, but the price was heavy. A year later, on May 17th, 1639, the Treaty of Kasri Shirin is signed with the Safavids. With only minor changes, the border it drew forms the foundation of today's Turkey-Iran border. For nearly 400 years, no major war has broken out between the two countries. The Sultan of Wrath left behind one of history's most lasting pieces. But beneath that piece lay the blood of 30,000 people. But the end of the story holds one of history's bitterest ironies. The Sultan who banned alcohol on pain of death is himself said to have been fond of drink. Records from the era say his health collapsed rapidly in his final years. Gout takes hold of his body. Just 14 months after his victory at Baghdad, on the night of February 8, 1640, Murad IV closes his eyes at 27 years old. According to legend, on his deathbed he gives one final order. His brother Ibrahim is to be killed too, the last male of the dynasty. Had that order been carried out, the 600-year-old Ottoman dynasty would have ended right there. Kozum Sultan does not let her son's final order be carried out. Even as he lay dying, he was a man trying to decide who would live and who would die. So what was left behind? A 17-year reign, an iron fist that lifted a collapsing state back onto its feet, a border still standing today, and a question still debated. Was Murad IV a tyrant, or was such harshness the only thing that could have stopped the chaos? We leave that verdict to you. Let's discuss it in the comments.